Hello, everyone. I didn't expect so much people here, so great. Yes, I'm Michael von Mühlen. I will share a little bit the process of a project we did the 2 last years, Opera Future Game, which is also part of the exhibition here. And yes, I come from theater. And as you were talking about imposter syndrome, it's something I think I know. I'm a director, and I always say, okay, I became a director because I can't do anything really. So I'm like a universalist dilettante in my job, and yeah, that's perhaps something I can share also with the person who spoke before. Yes, I come from theater. I worked in very different field of theater, so I did classical operas, even I did like Aida, I did pieces of Bertolt Brecht in theater, I did a lot of performance stuff also, and I worked a lot also with film and video on stage. Is there a noise from the computer? Okay, okay. And I can share just some pictures to show how video was embedded in my work, to show a little bit where I came from. Also a lot of installation stuff. Can I have the picture? Yeah. Yeah. That's, for instance, a production I did 10 years ago here in Berlin at the Staatsoper. It was also a music theater piece where the people could move. They saw the action, which was in this little box there. You can see just filmed, so you had no real contact with the actors. Here's a piece I did in 2015. It's a Mozart opera, Così fan tutte, and I found it very funny because it's like doing an opera before the pandemic, but it's like the Zoom opera before we had the pandemic. The situation was that all the people were on stage in a sort of set design, and we had this 8 simultaneous uncutted camera tracks where the actors were, or the singers were filming themselves all the time. You can see it here. Another situation. And I did also an opera film in 2021 where the whole theater was changed to a big green screen while we did a live cut of the performance with 7 cameras. And we played a lot of this with this potential of green screening, so layering different pictures over and over and so on and so on. Yeah. So, but I come from the theater world, and why did I start to make a game? Okay, the story started in 2020. I was supposed to make a new opera for the Munich Biennale. It's an international festival for new music theater. And there was planned to make a new opera by the composer Ole Hübner and the theater author Thomas Köck called Opera, Revenants and Revolutions. It was planned in this beautiful theater in Munich. It's the Cuvier Theater in the Residenz. And we were supposed to start the rehearsals in March 2020. It was an opera with a big choir, and suddenly it wasn't possible to do it because of the pandemic. It was not allowed to sing, it was not allowed to perform, you know it is, what was happening. Everything was built up, the stage design was finished, the choir did like 60 rehearsals just to remember the music and so on and so on. And the irony of the situation is that the plot of the opera we wanted to start is an apocalyptic scenario. In the opera, a choir of last people after a big catastrophe, Metz and Cyborg, and they are in a discussion. What happened here? Why is this apocalyptic situation, why it came over us? And they have the problem that the choir is ill of amnesia, so they don't have any memory of what was in the past, and they have sometimes flashback situations where the past comes over them. And the cyborg also, yeah, you know, it's the old Blade Runner problem. The cyborg doesn't know if what he remembers is real or not. And so in this situation, they are discussing why this apocalyptic situation came up and what the future can bring. And the last act of the opera plays in an empty theater. The piece was written in 2018-19, and yeah, when we wanted to start to rehearse the piece, all the theaters were empty, and we had a sort of global, I don't know, catastrophe, but we had a very severe breakup of the normal life we are used to live. So we started, while the first lockdown, we started to make some rehearsals, and the plan was to make a filmic installation of it. It was planned then for Haus der Kunst in Munich for November 2020. And what you see here are just stills from the set in the theater. We were filming while the lockdown, only with the soloist. It was not possible to do it with the choir because all these rules of no contact was not possible to make it with the choir. And we did a recording with the Mitteldeutsche Rundfunk of a big part of the opera. The opera is like 2.5 hours long, and we recorded like 17 minutes of it in September. So the installation in November was not possible because of the next pandemic situation, and it was postponed several times. And then we had finally, for March 2022, we had a date to do it in the Reithalle in Munich. And it was planned like an installation with 7 video channels, 4 different rooms, where we had different soundscapes and so on and so on. And I had the problem, how can I rehearse it? Because the time was so short to work there in Munich that it was clear we can just build up the set and it must play. And so I had to find a tool to work on. And this was the first time I opened a game engine, because you all know in the game engine I can simulate it in real time, and I can put my stage and then can walk on, and I can put all the timing. So when I opened it the first time, it was a little bit confusing. I think you know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, I felt like it's like coming home in a way, because it's when you come from theater, it's so close to what the theater process is. You have your assets are your requisites. To work in Blender is to going in the in the parts of the theater where they are building the costumes and so on and so on. And the engine is where you put everything together. You can put the light on, you can put the music on, you can interact with stuff and so on. And for me, in a way, it was like, okay, now my computer is like the Paris opera of the 19th century, but at my home. And I have so much opportunities to work on. I will just show you a little fly through the simulation.
Let's talk about uptime. Let's talk about unlife. Let's talk about undead. Let's talk about opera, ghosts, talking to ghosts. Let's listen to the opera. Let's listen to your undead, untimed, chord by chord. Why do we still listen to the opera? Why do we still talk about opera? Why do we still produce the opera? Why do we still opera, opera, opera?
Yes. This is a simulation I did before we were setting it up physically, and here you have some pictures of the real staging of it. Yeah. It's a very big room. It's like 100 meters long and 25 meters wide. Yeah, and this was, for me, to work with this engine was like, yeah, I don't know, in Germany would say Horizonterweiterung. It was a little bit blowing my mind, because normally with the theater you have a very heavy process. You have very long periods of planning. You have this very strong dispo of how you can work together and so on. And suddenly I was in a situation of completely autonomic work process. And then it was an interesting situation because the author, Thomas Köck, when we were performing in Munich, he wasn't in Europe. He was in Mexico for production, and he came back, and he only knows the simulation he was playing. And then it became a very interesting discussion we had that we said, okay, now we have to go further, and we have to work. We have to continue the work, and we invented a situation for a single-player computer game where you, as the user, are navigating a person in the first-person perspective through all the landscapes. We already had here in the installation also 3D animation films, and we transferred these animation films into the real-time engine to make them accessible. And Thomas Köck, the author, rewrote a text, a sort of monologue of the person you are playing while you are walking through this landscape. And we had the opportunity to do it with the Next Level Festival in Essen. They invited us to make this production. And you can see it here, but I can just give you an idea of it. You see some screenshots. Yeah, and it's like a mixed reality we did. Huh? We have this parts which are completely CGI, and but we combined it with all the films we did before in the theater, and we did a sort of a melange between an archive, an apocalyptic world you can walk through, and so on. And for me, it was aesthetically, it was very close to go also in this imaginary, because already the piece plays with all these idea of also popular ideas, filmic-inspired ideas of apocalyptic scenarios, and so on and so on. Now the production, or the game, which is now finished with a surround sound system, it's nothing you can download and play it at home. So we present it all the time in different installation situations, and sometimes also in situations which are more interactive. For instance, when we were in Dresden 2 months ago, we had a situation that in front of the theater there's a mobile exposition box, the hybrid box, where you can play the game. And for the vernissage, we were also at the same time playing in the big hall of the Festspielhaus Hellerau. And so it was like a open let's play situation. Huh? Here on the screens, you see from the big hall, you see the player in the box. The player in the box sees also the big hall, and the narration text, which is normally programmed in the game, was there performed by the author himself, like also an interactive situation, because he was reacting to how the gameplay was working. And also in this performance version, you can meet also Thomas Köck then in the performance. Okay, I don't have a picture of that. Yeah, in the middle of the piece, you have an avatar, a very realistic avatar of the author himself, who's coming to you and following your path. And we have a sort of motion capture system to map his visual expression at the same time on his face. So these are special situations we are doing with the production. And in summer now we are going to Impulse Dance Festival. It's a dance festival in Vienna where we will work more on this aspect of real-time performance, analog performance, and the boarding crosser towards the engine. So we will work with some dancers and motion capture suits, and in a sort of research project. And there will be also showing in the Burgtheater, which is also very interesting because the Burgtheater at this time will be in a renovation situation. We will play on the stage, look in the renovated public space, and again we have this situation of what are these public rooms which were empty while the pandemic, which is a very important topic also for all these apocalyptic scenarios and so on. Yeah, that's a little bit the process. For me, it was a very big opportunity to start to work on this crossing border field, and for me, there's a very important and interesting perspective also for the theaters. In a situation or in a society which is at the same time a society of closeness, and that's what we are normally working on in theater, because we have this co-present situation with the public and the actors and the actresses on stage, and to go far away in this digital room to work on this possibility also to connect spaces which are not connected normally, and there are for me very big opportunities to work later on. Yeah, you can see it here if you want, and I'm also curious what you're saying, because sure, we are coming from theater, so we are not so much on the interactive side in this game we did. It's more like interactive film, I would say, than a game. But when you see it and you cross me, I would be very interested to hear what you think about and to have some remarks. Yeah, do you have questions?
Thank you, Michael. If anyone would like to ask a question, we have a mic ready for you. You know that question of like, what did you do to start the pandemic?
Why? What?
There's a question that people ask people like, what did you personally do to start the pandemic? I think you have a good answer for us. Something about an apocalyptic theatre show. That question right up the back. I'm coming down. Thanks. My pleasure. Here we go.
Hello. Hi, thank you for your presentations. It was really interesting to see you merging two different kind of media together. I have a question about staging. So, I mean, it's obvious how important staging is in the traditional theater perspective, and I'm very glad to hear that when you use the game engine, there's some of that is translatable into the game engine. You can stage your play or your performance in the game engine. What I'm curious about is when you put the game into a real space for people to play, there's kind of is another stage. The space where people are playing, I actually have tried here with a 3-screen, and I see you have this white net-like decoration on the table and things like that. So I assume that you guys would have to spend a lot of time thinking about this physical space where people are playing the game in. So my question would be, what's your process on that? What's your learning points on that? How do you merge the digital stage and the physical stage of the game? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. There's one point I have to admit. I don't know, I had a little bit of fear just to make a game and to let it be downloaded, because as we come from theater, for me and for us and all the whole team and the set designer and so on, it was so important to think also about the concrete social situation you can use it. And for sure, also the sound aspect and so on, we can control it. It's much better, and we have these wide screens and so on, something you wouldn't have at home, perhaps. But I like also the situation of communication while you are playing it. So it's also why we didn't do it with headphones, because I like the situation. You are in the room, you are playing this piece, which is also talking about the perspective of being a public, because there's one scene in the opera where someone is coming on stage in the fictional opera house and talking to the choir and to the public. Okay, the public is sitting everywhere, all the time there where we're sitting all the time and nothing was changing ever. So you have like a double of this situation when you're playing the game. So that's why we were working on this situation. But as I said, also it's also a little bit of fear, because in this situation, I know what I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm doing when I'm giving something to download. I think the dramaturgy also must change.
Thank you. Great question. There's another one up the front.
Yeah, thank you. If there would be one thing you could name that the theater world should learn or adapt from the gaming world, what would it be?
Yeah, very interesting question. And for me, in a way, the pandemic situation for the theater in generally was, in a way, also a sort of opportunity, because we were forced to change the modes of working together, especially the link between the artists and the art departments and the technicians. When you are doing for the first time a live stream of a show, you are much more obliged of the knowledge of the technicians as before, and there was a very big learning. And I would say I can't say anything about the game industry. I don't know anything, but what I can say from the process we did, what is very interesting is these new forms of collaborations. Also, the new possibilities of distribution is very interesting, I would say. And also the whole working process, because in theater you are working very linear. You start with rehearsals, 8 weeks, and then the curtain opens and you have a premiere. And I think with these new tools where you are reproducing things and mixing things new together, you can come in completely new forms of timing also of the work.
Hello. Yeah. Now, I wanted to know whether this occupation with the game engine and the merging with theater, whether you would describe it as something that led to you towards a new kind of practice in your own work that would continue in a way from now on, or whether you would describe it more as a way to reflect on two different media within themselves. So, like, is it something that really could merge for you, or is it more two split things that are somehow interesting for you in this split?
No, I think it is someone which will merge with also the future projects I will do. Not for every project, because you have to choose your tools for what you want to say and to tell. And I love also to work in the analog situation. I love this confrontation you can have with the stage and the public. But at the same time, there are so much opportunities for new forms, for satellites you can build on, for intimate situation also you can have a reception of a work, and there's also a shift in my mind towards the whole working process, because working with the engine was much more like working in the atelier, and it's a different process. When you are on the stage and you rehearse with 100 people on stage, you have to be, it's like tang, 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 tang. You have to, you can't hesitate a second. This more intuitive process of bringing things together, of layering things and so on, is something I will surely also bring back to the normal theater work. Wow.
Thank you so much. We're out of time for questions, I'm sorry, but thank you so much, Michael. It's really inspiring to see also the possibilities of games crossing over with other mediums, and it's really wonderful to see it in person.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the community, because I've opened the first time a game engine in 2021 in January, and yeah, it's like the whole community with all the tutorials and all these possibilities to learn things. Thank you to people who are contributing to that. Thank you.